Well, when I was in the army, the culture, the regimentation, make it a lot more easier for every soldier to almost automatically line up or come to alignment with certain attributes. You know, in the uniform, there is a high degree of discipline, regimentation, your code of conduct, and being mission minded. And once you have these so-called attributes and values, you'll find that the teams will automatically be able to deliver with that sense of mission mindedness, with the sense of urgency. Because failure, as we see in many militaries around the world, failure is not an option. And in fact, this tagline was used by the NASA astronauts when they built the NASA program to send people to the moon, right? Failure is not an option, came from the military. And so that sense of accountability, that sense of being successful in missions, the sense that you leave no man behind, right, became quite naturally the value system and attributes of most soldiers in a uniform organization. When I left the army and moved on to the Singapore Tourism Board to do Formula One and to do destination marketing, there was, I think, a gradual or slight shift I saw in terms of attributes and values with the teams that tend to be more creative, all right? I mean, we used to curate lifestyle experiences when you work on tourism projects, when you run new tourism events. We have to be very creative. So the attributes of those teams will gravitate towards creative thinking, thinking out of the box, trying things that have never been tried before. I mean, just like Formula One, right? When we were asked to do Formula One, we were challenged to do the first ever night race in the world. It was pushing us to the limits, and that's linked to the value system that we had when we were working in the tourism industry. Pushing boundaries, think of the impossible, being very creative. Nothing is impossible, so to speak. And so that shift in value system was quite noticeable when you're no more in uniform. And you allow people to express contrarian views that may not be acceptable if you're in uniform, right? You just yes sir, no sir, you know. But when I left the uniform behind and I moved into a new sector, I realized that personally, I will need to also adapt and adjust to a new environment where cultures and values are not automatically regimental, right? Because people come into the tourism industry from many sectors. There are people from the banks, there are people from design school, there are architects, there are engineers, and unlike the army, where everybody goes through the same fundamental basic military school. So in a way, my appreciation of teamwork and values have shifted from one that is very tight, regimental, no nonsense, no arguments, discipline-based, to something that allows a bit of shifting and a bit of flexibility, you know. Maybe one way to look at it is when you look at a structure. When the structure is extremely tight and rigid at all the joints, there's no room for flexibility because it's a very tight structure. But if you allow a bit of flexibility at the base, at the joints, at the intermediate structure, you do see very interesting shift and flexibility, but yet retaining almost the same structure. Right? And the last shift would be when I left the Singapore Tourism Board and moved into a developmental space to build new parks. I realized that the value systems are not very different from the tourism industry. But when I went to Mandai, something new had to be acquired. One of them was the ability to care for animals, to look after nature, to love trees, Also, I have colleagues who are tree huggers, You cut a tree, they will be unable to sleep for the night because they think we have destroyed a tree, the soul and the spirit of a tree. So, yes, I kept quite a fair bit of the value system from the army, from the tourism. But when I went to Mandai, I realized that the appreciation and love for nature is quite important. When you build a park, you must try to do what we call sustainable construction. Don't make too much noise. Don't disturb the animals, the wildlife. Build and construct quietly if you can. And those values became quite important to the entire team. Sustainable construction, keeping with nature as much as possible as we build parks. And so I think all these value systems throughout my career are valid for teamwork with understanding that the culture environment may be quite different. The term multi-generation teams would suggest that the team will have at least 2 generations, all right? And so unlike a sports team, unlike a football team where you generally have players within generally the same age group, because physical energy is very critical, right? Certainly, a swim team, if you are above a certain age, you probably won't get selected. In the army, generally fitness, energy level would require soldiers to be of a certain age. But the rest of the industry out there, whether you are managing a cruise ship, whether you are managing a hospital or a Michelin star restaurant or a theme park like Disney, you will see employees that span different generations. So the theme park I came from in Mandai, our zoo is currently, I think, top 3 in the world. Our night safari is the world's only acclaimed night safari. And we have one of the best bird park in the world. It's not the same league as Disney because it's a nature park, nature and wildlife park. But you do see employees as young as 20 years old. And our most seasoned employee is already 70 years old. And they do work in teams that have young people, fathers, grandfathers, And so multi-generation teams, frankly, it's actually an advantage because you have that diversity of knowledge, wisdom, experience. In fact, the experience, unfortunately, is undervalued. And when you put together the diversity of knowledge, wisdom, and experience, and then the perspectives of young and old blended together, you will discover, and it has been observed many times across these industries, that you get better decision making. The process of decision making may be a bit more slow, but the rigor of allowing more senior employee to speak his mind, and then getting a very young employee who have joined us, maybe still wet behind the ears, and and clash the perspectives and bring the ideas together, and then weigh really what appeals to the target audience, right? I mean, the theme park appeals not just to young people. Uh, I think the parents who bring the children to the theme park will want to enjoy the theme park experience. So when you have a diverse target audience, then you need the diversity of employees, right? Just like on the cruise ship, 4 to 5,000 passengers. And you look at the ratio of staff to passengers on a cruise ship, it's one of the highest I can think of. Almost 1 to 4. So if you have 4,000 passengers, you probably have close to 1,000 employees serving on the ship. From your musicians, to the people who operate the casinos, to the real engine crew, the real sailors, the entertainment people, the F&B, and that diversity actually is very powerful, but maybe least appreciated because people like to work with like-minded employees. No, I don't want to, work with somebody who's old, less energetic. I may have to carry him through, but I think if we look beyond those little so-called inconveniences, I would say, the case for a multi-generation team is very powerful. Another perhaps well-observed value is that of innovation. I have seen teams in Mandai where you find that when you have a young and an older employee coming together, the level of innovation is quite amazing. Quite amazing because the older one will say, look, I've seen people coming to the park. This is what they will do. Their loiter time is a lot more in front of this exhibit, this animal exhibit. They want to spend more time to observe the behavior of the animal. Now, a young employee may not observe that, right? So when you put multi-generation teams together to think through a problem, to look at a particular challenge, you will find that besides the decision making that has quite good rigor, you will find that the innovation level also comes up. And so I am making a case that when you have teams that are multi-generation, it's undeniable that there will be some small limitation in terms of urgency of making a decision. People may have different preferences. People may like to gravitate towards certain ideas. But on the whole, you allow different ideas to be put on the table, and then you make the call. All right. But there's one other added advantage, I think, which is that of mentoring. All right. So when you have different employees of different age group, that process of mentoring is quite natural. And I will even argue that besides mentoring, there's also a case for the young teaching the old. Teaching the old in terms of AI tools, Internet of Things, creative space, color schemes. I think young people these days goes through a different mode of education. And so when you put young graduates, and I've seen that in my company, together with employees who have been there for 30 years, long service award, my goodness, you will see that suddenly the older ones can learn something from the younger ones. And the younger ones, of course, out of respect, will look at some of these older ones as a natural mentor. So I think there are certainly a strong case for multi-generation teams, diversity, whether it's innovation, whether it's the robust decision making, and whether that mentoring comes in naturally. I think based on my experience, except from the military where everybody has almost a certain mold. In the tourism industry, when you curate tourism experiences, when you run events, I mean, we do concerts, whether it's Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, you'll be surprised that the multi-generation teams will come up with fantastic suggestions about where shall we take Lady Gaga for supper after the show, The young people will be like, oh, let's have some party, backstage. So the older ones will say, no. Let's bring her out to see our 24-hour dining experience, the Lau Pa Sat, the Maxwell, the Newton, go to Satay by the Bay, So you have a different proposition of ideas rather than one particular trend of thinking. And so that's the case I want to make why a multi-generation team do have these advantages.